If you've been scrolling through endless rows of specs, watching YouTubers compare pixel counts and HDR labels, and still feel that knot in your stomach every time you think about pulling the trigger, this review is here to untangle that feeling. I've spent the last couple of weeks setting up the MSI MPG 271QRX on a mixed-use desk, swapping it between a gaming rig, a video editing workstation, and a Netflix binge session, and I'm going to walk you through exactly how it behaved in each of those real-world moments. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, let's talk about why a 26.5-inch QDOLED panel even exists in the market today. The idea is simple: bring the same self-emissive, color-popping technology you see in high-end TVs down to a size that actually fits a typical desk. For people who spend hours staring at a screen, whether you're grinding in a fast-paced shooter or grading color in a Premiere Pro timeline, the difference between a standard IPS panel and something that can turn each pixel on and off independently is huge. The MSI MPG 271QRX does exactly that, delivering deep, inky blacks that make shadow detail pop, and a color gamut that feels almost cinematic for a monitor this size. Now, who should actually consider buying this piece of hardware? If you're a competitive gamer who already uses a 1440p resolution and you know the value of a fast response time, the QDOLED's near-instant pixel transition will cut down motion blur in a way that even the best higher refresh-rate IPS panels sometimes struggle with. I tested it with a 144Hz variable refresh setup in a first-person shooter, and the lack of ghosting was noticeable. The moment I turned the mouse quickly, targets stayed crisp, and the overall fluidity felt smoother than my previous 240Hz LCD, which still left a faint smear during rapid pans. Content creators will also find a solid argument here. The 2560x1440 resolution on a 26.5-inch screen translates to roughly 110 pixels per inch, meaning text is razor-sharp and UI elements are comfortably sized without needing to scale everything up. When I opened DaVinci Resolve and placed the color grading scopes side by side, the QDOLED reproduced the subtle shifts in hue that would have been lost on a standard panel. For anyone who needs accurate color representation without spending on a massive, dedicated reference monitor, this is a sweet spot. On the flip side, there are clear scenarios where the MPG 271QRX might feel like a misfit. If your primary use case is watching movies from a couch, the 26.5-inch diagonal is simply too small to deliver an immersive experience. The panel's peak brightness, while respectable for an OLED, doesn't quite reach the nits you see on premium LED TVs that are tuned for bright living room lighting. In a sunlit room, I found that the picture washed out a bit, and I had to pull the curtains to appreciate the HDR highlights fully. So, for a traditional TV setup, you'd be better off looking at something larger and brighter. Price is another factor that can't be ignored. QDOLED technology carries a premium, and the MPG 271QRX is priced higher than many conventional 1440p gaming monitors of similar size. If you're on a tight budget and you don't need the absolute best contrast ratios, a good IPS or VA panel will give you a perfectly usable experience for far less cash. The value proposition here leans heavily on the visual fidelity and the reduced risk of motion blur, not on sheer affordability. Let's drill into practical strengths that you'll notice day to day. The first thing I observed was how the panel handled mixed lighting on my desk. I keep a desk lamp on the left side and a window on the right, creating a gradient of ambient light across the screen. The QDOLED maintained consistent black levels across the whole surface, unlike many LCDs that can appear slightly grayish in brighter zones. This consistency makes a big difference when you're editing footage that contains both bright exteriors and shadowed interiors. You can trust what you see isn't being skewed by uneven backlight bleed. Another practical perk is the built-in support for variable refresh rate, VRR, without needing an external dongle. I plugged the monitor directly into an RTX 4090 via DisplayPort, and the GPU auto-negotiated the refresh rate based on game frame output. The transition was seamless, no flicker, no stutter, meaning you get the smoothness of high frame rates without the extra hassle of toggling settings in the game menu. For streamers who toggle between high-res gaming and lower-res cinematic recordings, That flexibility is a genuine time saver. Now, for the practical weaknesses you'll bump into. The most common concern with OLEDs is burn-in, and while MSI hasn't published a specific endurance test for this model, the panel does show the same characteristics as other OLEDs. Static UI elements left on for extended periods can start to retain a faint ghost. In my test, I left a static Discord overlay on for about 8 hours, and after turning it off I could see a barely perceptible residue for a few minutes. It's not catastrophic, but if you regularly keep HUDs, news tickers, or static dashboards,